I would like to call to order this Tuesday, May 27th, 2025 meeting, East Hampton Board of Education. Please rise for joining in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It is the mission of the East Hampton Public Schools to partner with our families and community to prepare confident, passionate, and collaborative learners to navigate a complex global society. It's nice to be back in the T-Bell tonight, and we are going to start with some student recognition.
Okay.
Next on the agenda.
This is perfect. Guess what? Now you're not gonna have to wait a little bit longer because I'm not gonna give you the superintendent's update. So, where do I stand by the way? While I'm here doing it?
You're on here.
Oh, okay. So, Blake and Abby, come on forward. On behalf of the board, I'd like to thank both Abby and Blake for serving as your board ed student liaisons. We heard about each of them during their CAPE award nominations. And we just want to know that we are really appreciative of the commitment that you have made, balancing what it is to be a senior, a member of the class of 2025, the coursework, pursuing your college endeavors, but also being the students that you are here at the high school, the contributions that you've made. We have already heard that both of you are headed off to your selected colleges. You'll be going to Keene State, where you'll be an Owl. You'll be going to the University of Connecticut, where you'll be a Husky. Just always remember that the bell ringer status, that is who you are and how you became who you are, will never be forgotten. So I congratulate the both of you. So we have a gift for you. And then we already do one photo because part of that gift is relevant to a photo that you can take with the board members. So we have a gift that is right here from the Board of Education to each of you. And I think we can tell which one it is.
We got you. Congratulations, thank you so much. Congratulations, thank you so much. We really do appreciate all
We're
your
gonna
time.
get photos with board members who are here, so but you gotta put it up, so. Like, this isn't like any other picture or any normal picture. Well, you can't wear the hat, but you're like, no, I'm not going to the school and then go away. Yeah, you gotta be smooth. There. Oh, it's a good place. Did the board do okay? All right, come on, we gotta get a picture with you with the one. Board members, can we, have you come? Yeah.
Perfect timing, it's not in there.
Right in the front, I'll throw it to you.
Sorry.
For stay standing up or take a picture of all
We
the
take a
parts
picture.
and grams.
So you can wear those all summer long.
I'm so excited.
We found you didn't each already have one of those.
No.
Surprisingly enough.
So I'm gonna tell the story to you all. So Blake, I reached out to the baseball coach. And don't worry, I didn't say anything that was, anything that was, very hard. Blake's, baseball coach, I did reach out to, in hopes that I might be able to get in touch with them. But it was a big postseason that they had for Keene State. They actually was gone to the NCAA regionals. They lost to Salve, lost to New Jersey, the college, the School of New Jersey. In it, but yet I'm seeing that, a lot of returning players that are coming back there. And their prospects of getting further in the NCAAs are better than mine or what I played. Yeah. But their coach actually was from I'm not sure if it was he was the University of Hartford, baseball coach.
I went to one of the camps when I was really young.
Did you really? And he is up there and he has led a wonderful program up there altogether. His son played baseball with my son, so I figured I had it in to reach out and get some swag. I got no response. So, but it was the vote season, so I'm sure they were really.
Yeah, they were really busy.
So congratulations to both of you.
The two of you represent the epitome of what it means to be governor. We're so proud that you have been with us and we really appreciate it. And we wish you all the success in the future. We know you will be very successful and we're here on Monday nights twice a month. All right, inter board liaisons, it looks like we have none. And I do not have any update from the labor union representative, audience of citizens. Hearing none, we are moving on to the consent agenda. We do have one minor adjustment to the consent agenda, which was that Mrs. Oakley motioned to approve the consent agenda at the last meeting instead of me. But with that adjustment, can I have a motion to approve the minutes from the May 12th, 2025 Board of Education meeting?
So moved. Second.
You, all those in favor?
Thank you.
All right, committee report. You guys are up.
So as the 2024-2025 school year conclude to reflect on the accomplishments students have made at EHHS. Awards night was on Thursday, the 22nd, and teachers recognized students grades 9 to 12 for their outstanding and exceptional work this year. Scholarship night for seniors is also coming up next week as well. The National Honor Society annual talent show was a success, drawing a large audience from the community. The event showcased a variety of impressive singing performances, and thanks to the generosity of the attendees, $1,700 was raised for St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital. The Spanish Club was final meeting of the school year on June 3rd. Throughout the year, the club has engaged in numerous activities fostering cultural appreciation and language skills among its members. We thank the students for the dedication and enthusiasm, as well as look forward to celebrating this year's achievements at the upcoming meeting. Juniors and seniors celebrated a memorable prom on Friday, May 16th. Students enjoyed an event filled with yummy food, a joyful atmosphere, and good music. We would like to say thank you to the class officers and advisors for their effort in organizing such a special event.
Baseball unfortunately ended their season 5-15, and they played North Branford on Saturday in the first round of the Shoreline Conference tournament, and unfortunately lost 8-5. Softball went 6-11, and they played North Branford in the first round of the Shoreline Conference as well, and lost 5-0. Golf is competing in Shorelines today at Stanley Golf Course, and track at their Shoreline meet on Saturday at Pongachog Regional High School, where the girls' track team ended up winning the Shoreline Championship, and the boys' team placed in 5th. Boys tennis had their Shoreline Conference matches today, as well as girls tennis, and we all hope that they did well. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you, guys.
We'll be seeing you. Awesome. Maybe not here. All right, updates by administrators.
Speaking on behalf of the group tonight, we held our final professional learning session of the year last Friday, the 23rd. Buildings focused on a range of topics, including presentations across the district regarding the new school climate legislation that you're going to hear from me tonight. We went in for our fall launch at Memorial School. Time for teachers to complete our DESA rating screener that we use 3 times a year. It's our universal screening process for monitoring students' overall well-being in relation to school-based behaviors. We've talked about that in the past. Additionally, teachers began preparing for their year-end evaluation meetings. They have summative meetings with their administrators coming up, which will take place over the next few weeks. So the final few weeks. While this year is full of year-end celebrations and milestones, we are also hard at work planning for the 25-26 school year. We are preparing orders for instructional supplies, which will be processed after July 1st, completing classroom placements at the elementary level, and developing schedules at the secondary level with some various scenarios at this point. We are anticipating the needs of teachers, as some of them will be preparing for moves across buildings, changes in teaching assignments, and changes in grade levels. Additionally, staff from the various buildings also start planning for the needs of our students. So we're anticipating teachers, but the staff is really starting to transition student information. We have a digital data dashboard that makes sure we have access to relevant performance data. But in addition, we really have face-to-face conversation about the needs of our students. So Specifically, our literacy and math specialists are already meeting at the transition grade levels, third to fourth, memorial to center, to sixth, center to middle, and eighth to ninth with our middle schoolers transitioning to the high school. Special education team leaders also meet to ensure appropriate planning is underway for next school year. And our administration will continue this process over the summer months. We are also planning for the use of our summer months, which is much quieter than the school year, but still very busy. And so we have some key projects that will be worked on throughout the months of June, July, and August, in addition to all of the planning for the school year, welcoming our students. Our NIAC preschool accreditation process, our visit will be taking place next year. So we'll be finishing our preschool portfolios at both the classroom and program level. Written wisdom planning will continue over the summer for some teachers, as we move into a full new process for reading instruction at the primary level, and ongoing curriculum development at the high school in line with NIASC accreditation purposes. And in the midst of all of that, we're excited to celebrate our students and their many successes at this time of year. Last week, we enjoyed many outstanding student events, including our 8th grade capstone convention. Last Wednesday, that included action research projects by our 8th graders, and the range of passions that they demonstrated in their scope of their research was really exciting to see. And many of the projects also included service or community connections, which I think is really exciting for our adolescent learners as they're coming to understand their role in the larger community. And as Abby said, we had our high school academic awards, which was very exciting. It's one of my favorite events. This week, we're looking forward to our annual writing celebration at Memorial School. That's tomorrow night. This is a long-standing tradition at Memorial School. If you're looking for a quick enjoyment of writing or an opportunity for a real pick-me-up, you can see all of our learners in grades K-3 sharing very excitedly all of their writing across the year and the growth that they've made. And then on Thursday night, we have what is one of many of my favorite nights of the year, the Center School Band and Chorus Concert, starting right here at the high school at 6 p.m. So we hope you can join some of this. So that's where we are in administration. Great, thank you. Personnel.
The negotiations with the interventionist collective bargaining unit are ongoing. Talking with it.
Policy curriculum
Just what you have to.
and finance, transportation, building and grounds. He's not with us this evening, so the only thing we have tonight is to vote on Tuesday, the 3rd, coming up. All right, Dr. Campbell.
As was confirmed at tonight's town meeting, the referendum has been set for next Tuesday, June 3rd, at the town hall from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. It is my hope that everyone gets out to vote. Reading program. The reading program was approved by the Board of Finance last Monday evening and will be voted on this evening by the town council. I do want to extend my appreciation for the town's approval of this request, as it will result in a $110,000 adjustment to our current fiscal year 26 proposal that sits with the town as is. Once we are notified of its approval, perhaps as early as tomorrow, we will move forward with the ordering of our materials. Legislative update: over the next 2 weeks, our legislators will be banding together and campaigning for some final few legislative agreements before the session closes on June 6th. Important to note that the ECS, Educational Cost Sharing and Excess Cost Grant, are still sitting as presented during the Appropriations Committee release of their budget. And hopefully these will remain in place, which could certainly provide some relief to our fiscal operations next year, helping us minimize the deficit and the balance within our budget. Just an HR update, as just shared by Nancy, the interventions negotiations are ongoing. At this point, we have not reached an agreement yet. We are working to reach one within the next 2 weeks. We may, if we're fortunate enough to get an agreement ready to go for ratification of the board, may come to the board as early as June 9th, which would be very helpful as we plan for the rollover for the upcoming year. In terms of our next negotiations, we'll be preparing for the ad negotiations. We'll tentatively commence on August 19th. This evening, I sent a duty to confer notification to the town as is required for all teacher and administrative negotiations. On a final note, we have been meeting with our faculty and staff, board members may be aware of this regarding our reductions and reassignments for next year. The conversations that have taken place are connected to the initial tier of reductions needed to address the $730,000. It's important to notify the staff members involved regarding the status of their positions. If there is any potential for the likelihood of their position either being reassigned or the loss of that position. On June 9th, and so long as the budget passes, the board will need to take action on the proposed staffing changes. If the budget does not pass, we could utilize that June 9th meeting to review the next tier of proposed reductions. These have been identified in the budget flyer, but yet further explanation of these changes would need to take place if the referendum makes it necessary. That concludes my update.
Well, comment. Let's see. The presentation for you this evening, new school climate legislation. I'm out of practice presenting in here, so forgive me if I'm looking on the screen. So little testament to how long we've been in the other buildings. I used to easily be able to read the other screens, so my aging eyes, I can find. Shelley, do you mind starting with in which presentation? Oh. Is it all? Go to slideshow. See that across the top? Just, maybe, yeah, you can do that. All right, so East Hampton Public Schools school climate legislation, this is our initial introduction to this legislation. And this is legislation that was adopted in 2023, so I'm really just gonna be giving you some information about what that legislation states, what we need to do here in the East Hampton Public Schools, and kind of where we are in that implementation process. Okay. So Public Act 23-167, new school climate legislation is what I'll be sharing with you tonight. This legislation is the concept of having school climate legislation is not new in Connecticut. I think it's really important that we start there. We've had climate legislation here for well over 15 years, and it's been revised and changed many times. So it's something that is part of our culture now in the world of education across the state of Connecticut. The board has had existing school climate policy, and this legislation represents a significant change. The existing school climate legislation that's been in place has been changed every few years and adjusted, but this is a more comprehensive overhaul of the climate legislation. So it represents a more significant change than those that we've had almost every 2 or 3 years. And we're going to set out this presentation. I apologize because I know you're used to having it in front of you on the screen. So it has significantly modified existing school climate legislation. And it is mandatory for all districts going into the 25-26 school year. The future slide I'll reference, it was actually adopted in 2023, and districts have the option of implementing it this year, but it is mandatory for all districts starting July 1st, 2025. And it has specific specific elements that are outlined, including, amongst other things, first and foremost, that there is a school climate policy that's universal across the state of Connecticut. That Boards of Education must adopt, which is distinct and different from how legislation typically works. Normally, legislation is passed, various versions of policy are created by CABE or say Shipman Goodwin. Districts receive those versions and policy committees review and can somewhat personalize while maintaining legislative requirements to their local operating sensibilities. But in this case, there's only one version of this policy aligned to the legislation that was produced by CABE, and all districts must adopt that policy. So that's kind of key. It outlines expectations for responding to what is being termed challenging behavior. In the first read that you have, challenging behavior is defined. It redefines terms and responsibilities associated with school climate personnel and also establishes new training requirements for teachers. There is some impact on training we have to facilitate for our teachers over the next year and so on, to make sure that we can implement this climate policy successfully. The good news is, before we go any further, I think it's important to note that an emphasis on high quality school climate is something that's already part of our standard operating procedures here in the East Hampton Public Schools. All of your buildings work very hard to proactively set a positive school climate, to work with their teams, to solicit feedback in order to do that. So in some places, when I'm out around the state and I meet people from other districts, they're like, oh, this climate policy feels impossible. It's so big and there's so many changes and we're not really doing all of these things yet. And I think when I review it, there are some things that we have to adjust and change, some of which I see as opportunities for us. And there are other areas where I feel like we're already doing some of this and I'm gonna help with that as we go. Oh, yeah, sorry, I'll have to ask you too. So before we go too much further, what is school climate? The legislation defines it this way. I don't normally read slides to you, but just because it's at a little bit of a distance. So according to the legislation that is then embedded in the policy, school climate is the quality and character of school life. With particular focus on the quality of the relationships within the school community. And which is based on patterns of people's experiences of school life. And that reflects the norms, goals, values, interpersonal relationships, teaching, learning, leadership practices, and organizational structures within the school community. So it's really looking at how everything fits together to define people's experiences within school. So climate really encompasses a lot of different things that we're doing. How are we welcoming families into the school? How are we proactively communicating? How do we respond to difficult circumstances? How do we partner with families? How do teachers in their classrooms get to know their students and build relationships with them? Climate encompasses all of those things. It's not any one thing, and you can't just measure it one time and say, there it is, it's perfect. It's really a living, breathing, organic part of how we all fit together in our schools. I know, think about it. Okay, yeah. Now I'm excited. All right, so school climate is comprehensive, all right? It really thinks about all of these things. And the new climate policy asks us to think about how we align the different things we're doing and how those things intersect and interconnect. So that's what I see as an opportunity. We work really hard in a lot of different ways to make our schools as positive, as responsive, and as supportive as possible. And so the climate legislation is really asking us to audit where are your strengths and are there any areas that maybe you could do a little bit better? And if so, boost that up. So if we look at it from that perspective, that's a positive opportunity. That's to think about how our school climate efforts should be reflected in everything we do. It should be embedded in district improvement plans and our district artifacts. We already have a strong profile of the graduate, and it really reflects the skills and dispositions we're looking to grow in students over time. And that should reflect aspects of climate. For example, the fact that we want our schools to be collaborative environments would reflect that you really need to build strong relationships to do that. So that's an example of how we reflect climate. We're really asked and encouraged to utilize multiple data sources and demonstrate the interconnectedness of various programming. So how does our efforts to encourage strong attendance relate to our school counseling and our comprehensive school counseling curriculum? How does that relate to behavior and discipline policy? These shouldn't exist in silos, in other words. We should be thinking about how they interact. And I think that's an area where we really are doing that work already. When we look at a student who may be struggling, for example, we're looking at what does their attendance look like? Let's look at this child's experience from every angle to really try and drill down and make sure every support that we can offer is in place and that we understand the root cause and the nature of these needs. And so that is in line with this, with what this new legislation is asking us to do. So the legislation, in other words, should really support everyone's attempt to work proactively, not reactively, to create school environments that support student well-being and success. So as I told you, this was originally adopted by the legislature in June of 2023. And that whole piece on the policy that you now have was included then. That it would be produced by CABE, and there would be a singular policy, and the policy should be adopted as CABE produced it. And this at the State Department of Education level, they've created some other layers to really look at how this work is coming together in school districts. So social emotional learning and school climate advisory collaborative exists at the state level, not at the school level. And again, some districts started kind of this work this year in terms of adopting the policy. You didn't have to adopt it this year, you have to adopt it by this July 1st. Most school districts have waited to implement in 25-26 for a number of reasons. When it came out in June of 2023, it was going to take some time to get it in place this school year. Additionally, the state was responsible for producing, State Department of Education, some resources for districts. Model plans, rubrics, so you can evaluate your plan, clear definitions of terminology, samples to help you in making sense of what the legislation is asking for and what that could actually look like in a school. And so the state was, hopefully gonna have that by late fall, maybe the holiday season. We got it in April, which we were happy to get, and we've been reviewing aggressively since we received it. Your administrators have been looking at this throughout the year and have already started to attend training related to this. All of the building administrators, principals and assistant principals, as well as myself, have already attended training put on by the Connecticut Association of Schools in relation to this legislation back in March and April. So we're well underway, even though the policy isn't adopted. We've been researching it, we've been preparing for its implementation. One of the things that will be new for the East Hampton Public Schools under this legislation is that it does ask that we, and again, I think this is a great opportunity, that we survey our parents, students, and staff every other year. So we currently survey parents every spring. In fact, our parent feedback survey is open right now. We've always done that in line with existing climate requirements, as well as the fact that historically, the parent feedback survey informed an aspect of educator evaluation. That aspect of educator evaluation no longer exists, but we have kept that parent feedback survey in place because it's a good opportunity for our families to communicate with us, because that's important to us as a district, that we know how our families feel. We'll be able to broaden that. So we'll really have a full picture on all of our different stakeholder groups. We'll hear from students, we'll hear from staff, and we'll hear from parents. Those surveys have not yet been implemented and would be brought before you before they would be. That's something that the new policy, once it's in place, would ask of the district. So we would start that survey process next year, once you have seen sample surveys and have the opportunity to review and approve them. In addition, schools are required, per the legislation, to adopt a restorative practices response policy by July 1st. We have a restorative practices policy already in place in this district, but it may be an early fall opportunity to review that in line with some aspects of this legislation. So what does the implementation look like? What does this legislation require of us? Just kind of some practical action steps that we need to take. First, we have to adopt the school climate policy. That's the one that has the most firm timeline of July 1st. Then we have to establish a district safe school climate coordinator. Again, some of the things here I mentioned we're already doing. We already have that. I serve as the district safe school climate coordinator. So as the buildings may have questions that come up, they need to look into particular incidents. They know that we can talk that through. I hold district school climate meetings with our different buildings four times a year. We have to have a safe school climate specialist at the school level. Once again, we already have that in place. So the assistant principals and Mr. Moore, who wears many hats, serve as the safe school climate specialist at the building level. So that's the person any climate related issues go to. And I'll talk in a minute about what that means currently versus in the future. And then we have to have a safe school climate committee at the school level. And again, we already have that. So we have a district coordinator, we have school leads, and we have committees that already meet. We have to look at the membership on the committees in line with the new legislation, but it's not a concept that we're unfamiliar with. It's not that it's a new or strange practice for us. It's a part of our culture already. What else do we have to do? As I mentioned, we have to conduct surveys of staff, students, and parents. So we'll be looking at doing that next year. We have to develop, and this is a change, and this is one that I see gives us a lot of opportunity, a building specific school climate plan that establishes proactive strategies to support a positive school climate. So I want to unpack that one for a minute. Currently, we have a safe school climate plan in the district. We've had it for years and it's been updated in line with changes to legislation as they've come out. That safe school climate plan is currently available on our website and is something that anyone can access. And, but it's a one size fits all, with one plan for the entire district, K-12. What's a positive about that? It's really got some nice consistency. What's a negative about that is sometimes using one plan to respond to the needs of 6-year-olds versus 16-year-olds can feel a little rigid. So what the new legislation is asking us to do is to have building specific plans. In this district, that works nicely because we have different developmental stages and we'll really be able to customize those plans based on the needs of the learners in those schools. But there's another difference. Currently, the Safe School Climate Plan is really, and this is in line with legislation, we didn't come up with this on our own, it's really in line with what we're supposed to do. The current Safe School Climate Plan really is a complaint procedure that a parent can utilize if they feel that their child's individual experience in the school is not going well, and perhaps may include bullying. It's really the complaint procedure to inform the school that you have a concern and that you may want to find out whether or not there's a formal and verified report of bullying. Current legislation requires us to investigate that in a certain way and to use a very specific legal definition of what bullying is or isn't, and then decide whether or not it's verified. Whether or not it is, we also have to respond to those events and ensure that we're resolving the issues and putting in safety plans to support anyone involved. These climate plans are broader. They will still include a complaint procedure so that every child and every parent has a mechanism to come and report to administration when they think there is bullying behavior or other challenging behaviors. Doesn't have to just be one kind of behavior. And so this will include that complaint process, but it will also ask us to be proactive and identify all the things we're doing before we get there. So in other words, to kind of simplify it, the current climate plan is reactive. Something has already happened and we want to report it. These plans will be more proactive. We'll be telling everyone up front, these are the things we're doing all the time to ensure that we have a strong school climate. Universally across our school, these are guaranteed things that we're doing. And then in addition, if you have a concern and you want to report it, this plan will allow you to do that as well. So it broadens the purpose of the plan to not just be a complaint procedure, but really a tool to inform our students and our families how we build a positive school climate. Other requirements of the legislation, we have to train staff. And they are not prescriptive about how we train them, but there are a range of topics that they want our staff to be revisiting. Broad concept like school climate and culture, evidence and research-based interventions when a child is struggling. Again, we already have a lot of those systems in place in this district, but we would be including more of that information in our plan. And then also really looking at a process called restorative practices, which is a body of work that looks at how we help students repair and address problematic experiences that they have. So when two students are having conflict, how do we bring them together to really work that out, to discuss those issues, to try and be part of the solution? Doesn't mean that we're not ever utilizing discipline, it doesn't mean that at all. It just means that we're adding to that toolkit to make sure that students have the opportunity to repair. So it's not just someone gets in trouble and off we go. We don't really do that now anyway, but on top of it, that we're really giving students the opportunity to work it out and continue to work together in a positive way moving forward. Which in a small school community is kind of part of how we exist together. You can't really always avoid other students. There are times where maybe we need that, but at the same time, we're gonna be together for some time, and we're in an intimate community, so we have to work together to resolve those issues. And then this last issue is something that the legislation requires districts to develop a tiered challenging behavior response system. Well, what is that? Specifically, it goes further into a topic that has not been required of districts. This is kind of new for everyone. Doesn't mean that we haven't ever addressed these kinds of issues, but legislation hasn't required us to document how we address And so the new school climate policy defines a specific subset of challenging behavior that requires districts to respond with certain tiered interventions. A tiered response is required for an incident of challenging behaviors that meets any of the following criteria. So they're really looking for how you're going to respond specifically to these 3 scenarios. 1, a problematic behavior that requires clearing a classroom or removing the majority of students. So an incident where a student becomes so upset, they have to remove everybody else until that learner is in a calm state. Number 2 indicates a credible intention of causing harm to self or others. So if we believe the student is so upset that they may try to harm themselves or others, we have to have a specific response system. Or an event that results in an injury requiring medical attention beyond first aid. So some interaction is significant enough that somebody needs medical attention. There's actually a subset there that's not on the slide that, or a repeated pattern of behavior that results in someone needing first aid attention. So either it has to be more than that or constant. So the legislation actually prescribes what districts have to do here. So we wouldn't have a lot of choice in that matter. It's in the policy that you do between now, future dates. So implementation, the key thing we'll be working on this summer, I talked about how we have summer projects. One of them is school climate. We'll be developing our plans. And what we've talked about as a district is, as I mentioned, the current plan is just reactive and it's one size fits all. So the opportunity here is to really have a plan that's proactive and reactive and is a little bit more flexible to us. But we also want to still have some consistency in these buildings. So we see this as an opportunity to kind of have a plan that has some commonalities across buildings because we're not so big that everything has to be different. But that you can also customize maybe what those interventions look like, or the proactive ways that we build climate look a little bit different when you're talking about primary learners versus high school learners. So I think when we come forward with those plans, it'll be nice to see that there'll be some consistency and coherence across buildings, but also portions of the plan that are customized for the specific needs of that building and that set of learners. So the plans need to be developed by the school climate specialist. So already the APs, myself, Mr. Moore, we've set a work day to kind of start to sketch those out just as a frame. So the climate committee doesn't have to start from scratch. And the climate committees will work to develop them further. The plan should reflect data that we have, including survey data. So we'll only have parent feedback survey data over the summer, the survey we're doing right now, but we'll be able to add more of that survey data to inform our plans moving forward. We can edit them and revise and improve in an ongoing way. And then the state, as I mentioned, they sent us some resources in April. It includes new school climate standards developed by the Connecticut State Department of Education. It includes the policy itself. We have a rubric that helps us to really measure, is our plan doing all the things it should? So we'll utilize all of those artifacts and tools to make sure that our plans are in line with the legislation and meet this call to action. This I took from the legislation because I think there's a lot of moving parts in this, but really the spirit of this work is that the school climate committee, as they work, should work to create school environments where every individual feels valued, safe, and empowered to learn and grow. A school community that is built on mutual respect, inclusivity, and collaboration, fostering strong relationships among students, educators, and families. I met with all of our buildings last week, all of our certified staff, paraeducators, interventionists to talk about this. And when we got to this slide, this was a place where I said, all the things I'm telling you that we need to do, when you read this, does this feel like a part of what you're already doing? And we said, yes, this is a high priority. This is something we really value as a school district. Every district is always working to do better, but this I can say is a core value, that relationships between staff and students matter, that the relationships between students and staff, and between staff are all those layers of climate. We attend to, we value, and we look forward to celebrating these plans. So the key themes are that these plans ask us to be more proactive and less reactive, identify and articulate all efforts that support the development of positive school climate in the building in that school climate plan, that we streamline processes. Some of the ways that previous legislation asked us to proceed and manage complaints regarding student behavior. There's kind of different lanes for that. And now, as we move forward, the complaint procedures and the plans will be more streamlined. If you have a concern, you report it, and we're gonna investigate it. Again, I feel strongly we do that now. When I spoke with some of the, leadership that helped to develop this policy at the state level in this legislation, they said, we're worried that there are districts where when families say there's a concern that they just don't get any response, and we want to make sure that they're getting a response. And I feel like that's something that we have close relationships with our families, and this will only continue to streamline those processes to make sure that complaints and concerns are received, heard, investigated, and responded to. And then lastly, that we build cultures of repair. It's really part of our practices of how we address issues when they come up. How do we help students really take responsibility when necessary, apologize when necessary, hear different perspectives when necessary, so that students can truly sort of heal, repair, and move on from it. This should be reflected in what you read. If I go back a slide, because we'll send this out to you. And link the document, right there where it says requirements of legislation. When we send this Google slideshow to you, it brings you to this document, which is one of the documents I referenced. It came out in April, and it goes into more detail, so that you can kind of take a look at that in hand. This is publicly available. As you're looking at the K policy, this is a good kind of corresponding resource, and it's linked right for you in these slides. And that's what I have for you tonight.
Question.
Sure, Sam.
Wonderful presentation, and I'm very happy to see us getting into much more detail into special needs of students. One thing you didn't bring up, which comes to mind because my sister she swore to me her son had an issue with doing peanuts, that he was eating whatever and had nuts in it. His behavior changed. And it wasn't until later when they did an allergy test and found out he was allergic to nuts. When they removed the nuts, and she says, it's like a 9-day different person. In our assessment, you don't mention it in here, should we consider having diet and or allergies, or some students are on medical treatment where they are already, they have certain, they have to take the medication at the same time. We need to be on top of that and make sure that maybe the medication is off. How are we looking into that? I think that is part of this.
So the climate legislation is pretty prescribed about what we need to do here. Some of what you're describing is typically handled more in the PPT process, where if a student has a significant allergy, they might have a 504 plan or an IEP. If they're taking a medication to support behavioral needs, it may be discussed there. We pay very close attention to the medical information that we're given regarding allergies. Our school nurses manage that information. Building administration, along with teachers, manages that to make sure that students are safe in school. They don't necessarily suggest, it's a pediatrician who would be conducting allergy tests and determining whether or not a particular allergen is resulting in a particular
Is
behavior.
that normal? Is that something that's done for students now? Do we recommend?
Families typically would have those conversations with their family physician or pediatrician. But the other piece that you mentioned about student medication, that is handled through our school nurses as well. And that they sometimes are part of the PPT or 504 process. And they have systems that they use to manage that data and to distribute those medications throughout the school day. There are a wide range of medications and ways that students take that. Some is on a time release system, some has to be right after they've eaten. So they carefully monitor the compliance and implement those medications in school as prescribed by the physician. We don't prescribe and we don't manage that. We can give feedback on how it's going, and we are sometimes asked to provide that we notice a positive and or negative change when the physician or prescribing medical care provider, when they make a change or are considering a change, they may ask the school to provide information. But that's done through those channels. It would not be part of this plan. But when you are problem solving, when a student is really struggling, you might consider all aspects of their self in thinking about what's making them either find great success or great challenge in school.
Other questions?
All right, thank you so much. Well, as you review the policy, we would be happy to take further questions and we'll keep you informed as we move through this sort of policy is sort of the first step. So thank you for your time. I'll say, if it was working. Emotional challenge.
Shared service presentation.
Did you find those?
And she had.
That's the only presentation I have.
I didn't involve in this. I didn't know.
The EHP and students, what's going on?
Oh, I do have it. I'm sorry, shared service. I'm forwarding it to you now, Shelley. Sorry, Tim. Should be in that Gmail. In Chrome, Shelley. Do you wanna,
Is this the PowerPoint that I know?
Yes.
It probably should, you can open up in PowerPoint, the Google Slides sometimes, the settings don't have all of it. Actually, let's give it a try, because you have it there, and it might work. So I wanted to struggling with how best to frame the start of this, but I think what I would like to share is that in listening to Mary's presentation, there is a lot of correlation with the work that is happening within each of the schools and what a shared services department, albeit tangential to the finance department of the town, would actually look like. And in developing this presentation, there was some thoughts that had come to mind. And I think the key element that I want to press on the board is that in looking at a theoretical model of an organizational change process, John Cotter had really theorized some of the most important elements in terms of when you do propose an organizational change. And in our case, what we're exploring right now is a shared service model for the finance department between the town of East Hampton and the Board of Education. But with John Cotter, the key piece to it has to do with what is that sense of urgency. And as we are all aware, with Mrs. Banderas' retirement happening at the end of June, there is a sense of urgency surrounding what are we going to do with the finance department. It is now an opportunity for us to take a look at our processes and procedures, but also recognizing that any type of an organizational change process is going to have to be an iterative process, a process of review. We don't know what we don't know. This is not a model that has recently been in place here within this district. There have been districts in the state that have looked to implement this model. Some of those have gone well, others have not gone well. But the sense of urgency surrounding this is that we know that at the end of June, Karen is retired. Fortunately, and we'll talk a little bit later about what levels or degrees of support she might be able to provide and support us moving forward. But we're committed to trying to make sure that whatever it is that we look to do, it's going to happen. We have posted the position for the business manager, recognizing that this is probably one of the most challenging positions in school districts to identify a candidate. We know that we have been tremendously blessed with Aaron as our business manager in this district, having worked here for 17 years, and that institutional knowledge that's irreplaceable. What we also recognize is that we have two other members of our business management, our business department, who are very, very competent with both our payroll and benefits specialists, as well as with our HR specialists. On top of that, we know that we have very competent people on the town side within this town, where we have a finance director, as well as an assistant finance director, who have a very good understanding of our budget and our finances, but perhaps not so much about the operation and what that operation entails. What we also have is a commitment from both the town as well as our board to look at this model and take a look and see if this might be something where, as mentioned in what Mary had just said, in small communities, we know that we have to work together. And in some ways, perhaps this presents itself as an opportunity that's worthy of looking at, implementing, see how it's going to go. But also recognizing that none of us will know until it's actually in place as to whether or not this is going to be successful. But we can certainly make every effort to plan thoughtfully, to make all considerations of the things that we know need to be addressed in the immediate, but also look at those opportunities that might exist in the future where further efficiencies might be made, or new structures that might evolve as a result of it. The process of looking at it is really identifying those objectives, getting involved in the planning processes, which are already underway, moving toward implementation phase where it is in implementation, but then having a process of review. And this is where that iterative process comes in, that you're constantly reviewing, coming out what's working, what's not working, looking for the internal feedback as well as the external feedback of what is functioning well, and what are those modifications that need to be changed. And then ultimately, at the end of the day, say we run or operate with this for the year next year, and we're finding out that it is not working or functioning in a way that we want it to. We come back together to talk about, are we wanting to further readdress this? Or is it something that perhaps this is just not going to work in our school district? There are some very clear objectives that have to be put forth and out front. And Mary mentioned distinct and different, and in our case, distinct and separate. And that is that statutorily speaking, the Board of Education's run separate, distinct and separate from town operations. Yes, we are one as it relates to finances, but there are multiple pieces of legislation that codify the role of the Board of Education and the role of a town, and the way budgets are developed, the way that programming decisions are made, as well as meeting goals and missions of what our objective is within the greater facet of supporting the public schools. I've outlined some of these in statute for you all to recognize. The first being that the Board of Ed has full controls of the school district. That is an understanding that has to be understood whenever you enter into a shared service model, especially with finances. The Board of Education makes the decisions for the public schools. And there can't be interference with those decisions as they're being made. The next is that we as a board have a commitment and an obligation by statute to provide particular items under statute. Adequate books, supplies, materials, equipment, staffing, facilities, technology, equitable resource allocation among schools, proper facilities, as well as a safe school setting. These are obligations that we must fulfill. And that really is where your mission and goals and the objectives and the advancement plans that our administrators establish year over year. The next has to do with procedures of budgeting and finance. And those are very defined by what our responsibilities are with budget development, spending recommendations, authorizing expenditures, transfers, and even going so far as developing that budget, that line item budget that we present to the Board of Education or to the town in February, once you have adopted your proposal for the next fiscal year. And then the final is to make sure that we are meeting state obligations of supporting public education. In doing so, we're utilizing the funding that's provided by the state, whether it be through educational cost sharing, whether it be through excess costs, that we are utilizing those funds as deemed appropriate, but also as deemed required. In addition to that, that we're meeting our minimum budget expenditure requirement, we're meeting our minimum budget requirement. And as a result of that, we're not going to fall within any of these pieces of legislation where we have subjected ourselves to an oversight of the State Department of Education for not meeting any of these expectations. So those have to be put out front as key objectives of ours. And that is what we have already begun the process of discussing with the town. What this also provides is potential future collaboration as to what occurs between our Board of Education, business office, and the town finance department. What potentially down the road, there may be some structural shifting that could take place. But as we've talked already, is that we don't want to do too much too soon. The most important piece right now is to make sure that the financial oversights are in place so that we can meet what our obligations are from day one. And then if there are structural changes that perhaps may evolve or become evident over time, that we would move in those directions, only after having a thorough review and having been able to share this with the Board of Education. And then also looking at are there ways in which both agencies can work together to further support one another. I'll use as an example payroll and having an alternate person for a redundancy factor in the event that something were to happen to our payroll person, that we have somebody who is fully trained in our system, understands what our payroll system and how it functions, and is able to offer those supports to the school district. In addition to that, it's identifying the roles and responsibilities on the town side and the Board of Education side, and developing almost a team approach where they have support from colleagues who are doing similar work. Albeit our operation is so much larger than the town operation, and therefore we may be able to be of great service and support to them, but they could offer additional support to us moving forward. This is just an organizational structure. I did make an org chart for you all. I know that anyway, we take a look at the org chart, but I didn't want to get into the full details of that tonight, but I did put together an org chart, but I just wanted in simplistic terms to be able to identify that. Really, what is our current business department structure? So right now, as it stands, we have a business manager who is an administrator. This is a line position, a decision maker that is non-affiliated. We have a payroll benefit specialist as well as a human resource specialist. Both of those are classified positions. Okay, those are within bargaining groups. But both of those individuals have a unique history within this district and a very clear understanding of their roles and responsibilities. A proposed structure would look as if we would backfill the business manager, not with an administrative position, but with a fiscal assistant, sometimes otherwise referred to as a budget analyst. It's really what are the growing trends that could attract this potential candidate pool. Perhaps there may be somebody internally, we don't know this for certain yet, but this would be a position that would need to be posted sooner than later so that we could get this posting out there. But it's more to the level of classified staff. This is when defining positions as line or staff, this is a staff position. This is not a decision making. This is a support position, whereas a line position will be more of a decision maker, and that would be the role of the administrator. We'll talk about how those administrative oversight responsibilities would get covered in the event that we do go with this classified, non-affiliated position as the school assistant. The reason why that has to remain classified is that part of this role is also going to be collective bargaining and in negotiations. And as a result of that, you can't have somebody who's a member of a collective bargaining group who's sitting in a confidential discussion relevant to collective bargaining. Payroll benefits and specialists, that would remain the same in the moment that we are in. We believe, and Carol could speak to this more, that there are some structural changes that perhaps need to be made or could be made with payroll benefits. That's a lot for one singular person to have to take on responsibilities wise. It probably wouldn't be able to happen if it weren't for the fact that you have somebody who has been here for an extremely long time, who understood both of those roles, but those roles up until about, was it 7 years ago, those were separate. And then that's when they became really one.
I think they were very closely aligned all the time. So,
The last being the human resource specialist. Right now, this individual really has functions that it relates to family medical leave, has functions as it relates to workers' compensation, deals with some staff absence management. But that is a role that could also further evolve as we move down the road. But right now, those two positions, the payroll and benefit specialist and human resource specialist, we're not making any proposed changes to those roles until we can really do the larger address of the functions of the department. But the fiscal assistant, we would need to have somebody back into that position that would help further support our budget development analysis, being a point person for the budget that could communicate with the town, but also is going to be a part of a lot of the planning processes that occur with the administration in the school district. About 2 weeks ago, we met business manager, finance director, town manager, and myself. And I was busy taking notes on all of the discussions that transpired. I tried to categorically place them in 2 buckets of really key responsibilities. Please understand that this is not fully outlined. All aspects of the role of the business manager. It is so much more broad based on the skill level that we have of our current business manager. But yet, this is just some of the higher level areas that we know are going to need to be looked at in the immediacy of any change. The first, under administrative management, there are so many things that are tangible, but there are so many things that are intangible that are within this element. And one of the pieces in conversations with Karen is that whoever it is that's in that role has to understand the mission and goals of this school district. Though that gets to the legislation, but it's a much broader piece of all of it. So understanding what our school district is going to be. So if the town finance department is going to be the oversight piece to this, there have to be inroads for them to really begin to listen and hear of why we do what we do, especially if they're going to be at points where questions may be asked as it relates to it. So school and district advancement planning is a big part of what we do here. It's our strategic planning, it's your board goals, it's your school-based goals, it's our department goals. The next is really looking at an opportunity for there to be opportunities for administrative support. Right now, it's so easy for all of us as administrators just to go to Karen to ask those questions of Karen for her input in there. What she has for the background knowledge, we know that nobody on the town side has that. And therefore, we are going to have to work together to be able to answer questions and also try to inform the finance director and the assistant finance director as to what are some of the ways in which precedent has already been set with how things are handled. But also now we're going to have to kind of train them on institutional knowledge of the district. Board of Ed relations, as you all know, the business manager has a lot to be involved with the board. And we know that the town is going to, as has been shared already, that they will provide those degrees of communications with board members as well. But keeping in mind that we will have a point person that would be a classified person that will also serve as a point of contact for Board of Ed, if there are questions, and those questions might need to be further researched, and we may bring them down to those conversations, but I just don't anticipate, at least in the immediate future, where there's gonna be a great comfort for any board member or any administrator or employee to reach out to the town until this really takes form. It could take some time for it to really take form. Could be a year, could be years before that degree of comfort is there. There's a lot that happens with employee relations. Karen is so always available to members of our faculty and staff who reach out for questions as it relates to things relevant to their finances. Not finances as personal, but things related to the school district finances, that they're very comfortable reaching out to her, and therefore we want to make sure that we have what's in place to further support them. And that's where I do believe that this fiscal assistant would be that point of contact for our faculty and staff, as well as other administrators who are in the district. There's a lot that happens between the state and the school district. As it stands right now, the discussions have been that the town will really take that and be really a big piece to what we're required to do as far as our state level audits, as well as our grants, and certainly in communication with the state as it relates to things relevant to our budget. There's a lot that goes on with community relations as well, as you see, Karen, with presentations that are being made, as well as being visible to the community. This is an area that we're gonna have to look at to further address. Vendor relations is also a key piece to this, where we have a lot of contracts within the school district with multiple vendors. And we have to maintain those relationships with our vendors. As we're always looking to get the best prices for our goods and services that we have. And also being able to certainly monitor what types of pricing is available to us as a district. And then, of course, there's always inter-district cooperation, and as has been shared throughout the budget season, we get a lot of information from neighboring communities, from their business managers or their business departments on what they're doing, how they're doing, updates on their budgets. Those communications also have to continue happening for us as a school district, so that we don't become very insulated in what it is that we do. In terms of the office management, this is a few broader categories, but there are a lot of operations that happen within our business office. These are things that were already being discussed with the town, as well as our financial administration and how that is handled. Right now, the town has some part to this already, so it's not something that they were overly concerned with. But yet there are different operations and systems and structures that are being utilized that are gonna need to be, that they're gonna have to familiarize themselves with. When we met with them, nothing relevant to financial and budget administration was a concern that they raised in meeting with them. As far as the financial analysis, they're doing financial analyses as it is right now. But it's not to the depth that we do our own in presenting it to the Board of Education. But in terms of reports and projections, there is a great willingness on their part to be able to provide that to us. I also do believe that fiscal assistance role will have a part in all of that. And working with the finance department to get whatever information is necessary to put together those reports. But they did state that they would be very helpful in providing those reports to us. Budget development management, this is gonna be an interesting, this will be an interesting piece of work that we would do together. I would really said to them, when we met last, that we want them to be, I really want them to be a part of this upcoming fiscal year, because this is the opportunity you'll have to sit down with our administrators, hear about the programs that are being proposed, but to really be a part of it, and really immerse yourself in the Board of Education budget cycle to gain a greater familiarity than they currently have with our budget, how it was formed. So as questions are presented to them, that they're more informed to answer those questions. The resource allocation and management, obviously, we have final decisions of anything that we're going to, anywhere where we're gonna allocate our resources and how those funds are going to be managed. But we'll be working with the town entity to be able to do that. And then bids and contracts, they would support the district with all of our bids and contracts that we would have. We know that we, just as we did most recently with the indoor air quality or with HVAC grid, This town was a part of that. Jeff actually was a part, working behind the scenes with both Steve, Dave, and I, and Karen on that HVAC grant and, our an HVAC bid. And that is what went out in an RFQ, so they will continue to support that, as well as all the contracts that we have. Some, we have shared contracts right now with the town to begin with, but then there are contracts that we have onto our own that we will work with them on. HR, payroll, benefits management, there's obviously a lot to this. By most recent count, there are upwards of nine people working between both the town finance department and board of education finance department. So we know we have three at the time. So there may be some overlap as it relates to payroll benefits, but right now, once again, not moving down that pathway until we get a good understanding as to the roles and responsibilities of everybody that's involved. There's a lot that we have to do with payroll benefits relevant to federal, to state, both compliance. Right now, as it stands, we are going through a major shift with our health benefits, which is consuming a tremendous amount of time on both Karen as well as Lorraine. And as a result of that, you know, we are in a moment right now where those compliance factors that need to be met in order for us to do this rollover is extremely significant. There are elements of unemployment, FMLA, Family Medical Leave, as well as COBRA, of which the business department provides support to our membership. Just as the town has this, it's not as if it's a foreign concept to the town, but it's could be handled differently. We haven't looked at how their department handles it versus how our department handles it. But there is at least is an awareness as to how these can function, but as it stands right now, this would have to still remain, as I mentioned, with the HR and the payroll benefits management, will remain within our district. Health and retirement benefits, what's so different from the board of ed and the town has to do with the fact that many of our faculty are, actually all of our faculty are in a totally different type of pension system that's very different from what the towns. They're used to what they're familiar seeing with town workers, but with ours, it's very, very different. And then the last is collective bargaining, is that we are very different in how collective bargaining functions. Most of the town collective bargaining groups are governed by NERA. Right now, you classify groups that are governed by NERA. Processes with NERA are very different than processes related to teacher and administrators. So with that, it's going to be important that we have somebody in-house that supports our negotiations, but I'm a little bit more comfortable with having a person that is within our agency that's classified, that could be a support to us in the board. We still utilize our legal counsel, our negotiation process as it is, and that won't change. What we did have a lot of discussion about were those financial systems. Fortunately, the board of ed in the town utilize the same financial system as Munis. So there already is an understanding of that, but yet even at the town's volition that they don't use it to the fullest extent that it could be used. And perhaps there might be opportunity for both of us to work together at how might we be able to implement or further utilize all the capabilities surrounding Munis. We have a time management system, a time and attendance system with Red Rover. That they actually were receptive to, thinking that might actually be something that they could utilize for time and attendance, as they're not, I don't think, quite comfortable with their system as it is. So here, in just the discussions of that, there was some reception to what it was that we have that could be a benefit to that. Then, of course, there's a lot of reporting that gets done on the state, there's state financial systems that are in place. Each of our vendors, a lot of our vendors that we utilize, they have their own ways of managing payments. And then, of course, we have an entirely separate obligation of records management, which is different from the town, that our business manager obviously has a lot to do with. And we'll have to maintain those services in-house within the board of ed, because it's a little bit different than some of the records management pieces, which is required as for the state library and for our workers. Grants management, there's a big piece of this with grants management, it's right now, both our director of finance and the assistant director of finance have familiarity with the grants management system. They are in that system. their familiarity with it, but we are really responsible for the inputting for those grants. They will help us with the fiscal elements associated with it, but a lot of the narrative information is information that that we would provide, to them. And we would upload it ourselves, but then there would be some fiscal elements that they would be responsible for. And then with all of those, I still have to authorize all of the grants of possible. And then, the next is how we manage those grant reports, grant awards, there are reports, both in the project and the year reports that are required. Once the grants have been utilized, the town will provide the supports as it relates to that. There's a lot having to do with compliance and reporting that we need to have, in order the town is going to support us with that. And then the operations management, there's so much more to what Karen does, and I'm only giving a capture or a snapshot of that right now. But there's elements of strategic planning, looking at system and process improvements. And then there are two big pieces, nutrition services and transportation. We have a self-operated, nutrition services program, we do not do an agency right now. And with that, a lot of great work has been done toward that end. We do have a director of nutrition. And we were looking at, in fact, I can get into this, into the next piece, about providing further supports to Director of Nutrition Services, Casali, moving into the next year. And then the next would be transportation services. And really, I would work very closely with Linda Minor and MJ Transportation Services. They have somebody already. MJ provides through a transportation coordinator who is absolutely outstanding. But I would be the person that if things were to have to get to a higher level, that they would come to me. Whereas Karen had been that person for them in the past. Then we get to the implementation of it. So right now, as it stands, transition planning between the board of ed and the town has begun. Finance director, business manager, our finance departments down the road will be a big piece to this, having both Elaine and Lorraine be a part of communications and sit down with the town finance department as there really is an evolution of an understanding around the roles. I talked with Nancy about this. I think what's going to be important. We have reached out to Zach Jura, your board's council. Most of our communities that have shared service, there's a memorandum of understanding as to what that looks like. We would look to put together a memorandum of understanding. Here, we're going to look for some models for us to take a look at. But I think it's important, at least in this first year, to try to define it as best as we can through an MOU. But also leaving in there that possibility that if it does not work, that there is an escape clause for us in the event that we put every effort we could into making this work, giving it our best shot. But just as far as functionality is concerned, it just doesn't seem like right now maybe the right time to do this. And then there are two elements of contracted service I want to bring up with you all. In addition to backfilling with a fiscal assistant, it's important, as Karen has already been willing to do so, is to be there to support us in the transition moving forward. This can't be done successfully without the institutional knowledge that she possesses. And having her as an independent contractor or consultant moving forward will be extremely beneficial. And she knows that this is a big endeavor for us as a district, and having her be a part of this is absolutely key. That would involve our end of year for fiscal year 25, looking to roll over. We have state and federal reporting that are coming due, EFS being the big one, that's for our state audit. Really helping to support Lorraine with payroll benefits as we get through a major transition with the health, health and health savings accounts. But also it's even that setup for the upcoming year when we're setting everything into the system. The next is providing administrative support for all of us and being there to answer questions that come up from time to time, so that we have the ability to connect with her and ask her to tap that institutional wisdom that she possesses. And then for the purposes of helping us with the transition plan. The next is hiring a nutrition services consultant. I'll be very open with that. I have so little background knowledge of nutrition services. It is an animal unto its own. And it has become more and more complex over the years. And where I have utilized agencies in the past to provide it, where all of that services covered. Karen has been instrumental in the development of this current program that we have, as well as supporting Kate Casali. Without her being here, it's important that we backfill with a consultant, and she believes that she can share more about this, that there may be some consultants who are out there that she would reach out to that could provide that degree of support to Kate, that could answer those questions that she needs. In this year, unfortunately, timing would have it that we are up for our review with the state with nutrition services, and that is a pretty significant endeavor. I've been down that pathway one time, and it was in that moment that I had actually reached out to EastCon to provide the oversight to the nutrition services program, not as an agency, or the staff who work in the program or our staff, but just the state audit itself was so significant. And what I also gained from there was a support structure for helping to develop menus, making sure that dietary and nutrition needs were being met. And we do think that having a consultant, at least for a year, this would likely cost less than $10,000. Having that for a year would be extremely helpful in making sure that we can keep our cafeteria program moving forward. And then comes the annual review. As I said, this is an iterative process. It's constantly under review. But at the end of the year, but even throughout, we're giving updates in the finance subcommittee, anybody coming to the board, we can give updates just on how is that shared service model working? What are the things that are going well, or things that we're really struggling with? The next would be really kind of looking at that more than in-town collaboration as a whole. Are we working well together as a team? Or are there areas that have come up as concerns? We're really looking at our internal communications, how is that role of the town functioning within the role of the Board of Ed, and how are communications going in terms of our operations, and seeing that they're support and understanding what it is that I can do. Fulfilling our Board of Ed related goals and objectives. Has this shift been able to help us further meet our goals and objectives? Or has it really stood as interference for us being able to meet goals and objectives? Are there any identified efficiencies or recommendations for future improvements that we are identifying over the course of the year that we want to put in a plan for the following year? And I think the most important piece of this is going to be the feedback. Once we get this underway, really, what is the feedback that we're getting from everybody in regards to that shared service model? So that is kind of context of what we're looking at, and processes are underway. But what I'd like to do is make notes and questions that you have, that we want to either potentially answer this evening, or things that we really need to go back to and take a look at. So thank you.
Do we have any sense of how these future efficiencies can be quantified, or what are the expectations that the tasks remain the same? Potentially, staff remains somewhat the same. I think they're all full-time.
I think that what I want to first start by stating that in looking at different shared service models, I've always been cautious to state that there is a significant financial gain from doing it upfront on personnel. You know, perhaps in this moment, if we're backfilling an administrative position with classified personnel, there is a degree to which there might be some savings. But I would think that there has to be a relook at some of the roles and responsibilities that current individuals have. And where those savings may have once existed now have become responsibilities on others. That there may be some additional funds that need to be designated for that. As a result of it, it's hard to quantify what those savings are. Where I think your efficiencies come in is outside the realm of personnel. And I'm actually taking this from the context of having a shared service model with technology department in my previous district. And really what were some of the things that we saw with it, but also exploring shared finance service department between the both of that. Where you're gonna see your efficiencies perhaps are in the way in which you meet these, your requirements. Knowing that we have a backup, albeit doesn't look like a backup for payroll, doesn't look at face value as an efficiency or a savings. But in the event that we were ever to run into an issue because we didn't have that backup, there will be significant costs associated with it. So sometimes you can't calibrate it all on a cost, but there are ways in which you are saving this town money moving forward. On top of it, it's even the shared elements and program. So in meeting with everybody, we recognize that the town is investing a lot of money in its financial system with units. It's not being utilized to the fullest extent. It gives opportunity to redefine roles, understand the system together, and how might we work together to help utilize some of the things that are already invested in, and providing a greater service to the community, or helping us a little bit more, but we just haven't had the capacity to get those moving forward. There might be some systems of supports that we have in place that we also could share that could bring some savings, whether it be the resources that we invest in together. So we often, and I'm going to use this as an example, we have our own copy contract. Town has its own copy contract. One could argue that one is better than the other. But at the end of the day, as we move towards this model, there could be some contracting that we will do, but we will do it together. And in doing so, you always get a better price. It's how do we agree on things if we're not, how do we agree on perhaps a particular copier if we have different needs, but that all has to be factored into the bid to understand that elementary school copiers needs or primary school is to be very different than what's needed in any, any particular department for the town. So therefore, looking at it more comprehensively, you may be to see that there is opportunity for savings or efficiencies. And then it also gets people thinking differently about how we operate, and perhaps there might be structural changes within the department that could better be utilized to support both of our needs in areas that we have some vulnerabilities. We have some vulnerability with human resources. I think you as a board have heard that there have been some, thoughts about, the fact that we could use somebody with more experience with HR to help us with HR matters. There may be an opportunity down the road. In West Harbor, we had an HR shared model on the town of HR, the executive director for human resources in West Harbor. We did both the town and the schools, but educational law is very different. And there were support structures that were put in place that he was the only person. They had departments within with classified staff that were designated to each, but there was an oversight piece to all of it. So, I'm cautiously optimistic that it brings some degree of efficiencies and savings based on what I've experienced in the past. But every town is unique and it's different. And we would hope to identify where those are to show that there are some short wins, but also some opportunity for some long-term wins. But I do believe it's worth really looking at this and giving it the best that we can to see if we can make this happen.
Other questions?
Real quick, if we roll this out, I anticipate you were going to require upfront training expenditure of 1, 2, 3 months max to help develop whatever new person comes in to learn the new tools. No, you're not going to find anyone who's going to know everything. And you may have to provide some sort of training or funding to help them learn whatever new system. And so I'm just letting you know that you probably would require something up front.
We talked about this the other day, so we did do. When we were looking at the shared financing part for the town and the board. Munis itself, Tyler Technologies, they do formal audits. Of which they come in, assess the systems that you have set up for both the board and the towns they did for us. And then they looked at it and gave recommendations of these are the things that you would do and get them done pretty easily. And these are things that you should really look to moving in the direction of, but it's gonna take some time, and you may have to make some modifications. I shared the report with both Dave, Jeff, as well as with Karen, when we met. And that what they do is once you've identified the areas through title technologies, meaning this is kind of one of those trainings. They then provide the support trainings of how to get there. But there are costs associated with those trainings that you will do, but it does outline those. They identify the areas and then the town board of ed makes decision on. This is what we want to work on right away. And therefore, this is where it will be. So I do anticipate that there will be some training, but yet it may come at a point where the town sees their part of it, and it's not just the board that's gonna fund this. It's gonna be a combination of joint effort between the board and the town, try to do this right and make sure that everybody is trained as needs to be trained. Within that finance department. If I could tell you, I don't know every function, role that everybody in that department has. Only those that are in those roles understand that to the fullest extent. They have to really define this together as a singular department and then make their plan moving forward.
Good, you?
No.
Okay.
I don't believe we're gonna have any. First, let's just put it out there, that you can't find a replacement business manager. That's your problem. If they don't exist, and those that are out there are. You don't want them there, so this is why this has to be looked at. It's not the ideal circumstance. It makes it's achievable because much like what we have with Karen. Is that Mr. Jickla as the finance director is a very competent person. So, however, he's been here for a long time also. So, could be in a situation where he's going to be trained up, and then he's going to retire out. And now, so. Instead of just having a finance manager for school system, now you're trying to find a finance manager for school system and a town finance guy. Which is going to be one problem later on. I don't see any savings in it. And that, the first thing there, the town, said, we just got all this stuff to work. Well, that's gonna cost, how much out of the school budget is gonna, in cost share, and they said it right there. There's other people in the school system that are gonna have extra duties, and they're gonna have to compensate for it. So don't look at it as a savings. The only way you have to look at this is that somebody's got to do this job, and there's nobody to do this job right now. So we would have to be very, if in the short term you're gonna do this, which I don't think we have much of a choice. We're just gonna build that MOU real tight, so our divorce, our prenup there is nice and solid. You know, you're adding on the nutrition, there's gonna be a lot of moving parts on it, but like I said, I don't think we don't have a choice this year. So how fast you can put it together?
I'm gonna hopefully get the fiscal assistance position posted as they always beginning of next week. Know that we can commit to help with that transition. Been meeting with Karen, talking about really how we can develop the transition services with her. Further supporting this district, and I know that there's a commitment she has made to this town, wants to see things go well, and she's the only one who possesses that knowledge to share that, so we'll work with her on that right away. Yeah, as far as become meeting with the towns.
As far as the questions that, for concerns, with a bifurcated budget, you're gonna have to think about conflict of interest. And how that's gonna work. I've got personal knowledge of the town did withhold funds many years ago when we had some funds. And they, not entirely play nice in the sandbox. So that, I don't know how you go about that. You're not one way or the other. The bifurcated budget conflict of interest is gonna be interesting. So, let's see what you can do.
Right? Right, we have no unfinished business this evening. Anyone have future business? Hearing none, new business, we have two quick things we need to address this evening. Our medical advisor is retiring. It's our responsibility to officially approve the appointment of a new one. I give the agreement in your packet. This particular physician is an emergency medical physician who has been hired to be the medical advisor in surrounding towns, so familiar with the process.
Make you want to approve the agreement with written.
Second,
Second.
thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, excellent, thank you. Mr. Barber, do you want to address 14.2?
It's your first read. You want to, no, we're going to approve it next time. Or you want to approve it tonight?
First read tonight,
Yes, we can.
second read would come the second reading of June.
Well, maybe for efficiency purposes, because there's no variables on this thing. I mean, it's a take it or leave it, if you leave it, you've got problems. So,
We just, we don't want it in effect till July 1.
well, I guess we can issue what the effective July 1 policies.
How about we, I think just to keep it clean.
Whatever you want to do,
That's-
I don't.
I
Looking for efficiency, Brian, where we are,
Very much appreciated.
move this thing along,
Clean
move this train down the road.
And move on. All right, any, no personal actions, audience and citizens, last opportunity. Sure.
Nathan J. Cox, 18 Burke Hill Drive, Hampton. In listening to the school climate policy, that's replacement to the current climate plan. My assumption is that this is not just about compliance to the state requirement, but also is there something that we feel would result in improved academic performance? And if so, is there a rubric to also measure this improvement so this program can be adjusted along the way to bring even greater academic results? It's a basic question for the board to consider.
Thank you. Calendar of events is full, of end of year events, trying to stop by any if you can. It's a really exciting time for all of our students, so enjoy it.
Motion adjourned.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you, everybody.